for joining me today. We're going to continue our series on DMing, DMGeezer's guide to learning how to be a DM, being a better DM, all of that kind of stuff. It's turning into quite the series, so thank you for joining me. I think we're on episode 5 now. Previously, first episode was me just talking about who I am, a little bit of my background, some of my strategic overall priorities when playing D&D, not specific to any one thing, but just my overriding philosophies. Second one was a quick glance at the basic rules and what you need to know as a aspiring dungeon master. I kind of touched on what you need to remember versus what you need to just have access to. Remember, I'll say this repeatedly, you don't have to memorize everything. You don't have to memorize much, but there are some things that you do need to commit to memory or give yourself a cheat sheet or whatever, and that's what we talked about in second session. The third episode, we took a deep dive into the sequence of turns, the turn sequence, and actions, bonus actions, reactions, opportunity attacks, all of that. That is definitely content that you have to remember. Maybe if my video or not, you've got to understand and commit those to memory. You have to understand the difference between an action, a bonus action, a reaction, opportunities, attacks, and how everything plays into it. So you don't have to have every combo memorized, but you need to be able to absolutely with confidence understand the difference between an action and a bonus action and a free action, for example. Fourth episode, we actually just ran a combat. I set up a VTT, ran a simulated combat where we went through a lot of the steps from the previous episode. We put those terms into actual use. What's an action? How's a reaction? How's a held action? Free action, etc., etc. A couple little dinks in here and there, but just to, that's part of D&D. There's very rarely you're going to have a perfectly flawless thing. So if you're to see how all of that stuff works, go to episode 4. Episode 5, we discuss the basics of magic, understanding how to read a spell block, what's important about a spell, the casting times, the area effect, the difference between a targeted spell versus a save effect, concentration. We spent a little bit of time talking about concentration, a lot of time talking about that. And that was just the basics of spells. And I'm going to emphasize again, as I said there, no one's going to memorize every spell ever. You just need to know where to look for the keywords and how they interact with each other. So, here we are. We've been talking a lot about rules, despite my original thing saying that, there's not a lot. There is a lot. There is a lot that goes into being a good dungeon master. The better prepared you are for an adventure, the better prepared you are and confident in the rules, the smoother the game will go, the more of an even pace your sessions will keep. You keep to a good, nice, fast pace in your sessions, and your players are engaged, they're enjoying it, and they're building upon it. They're furthering that method. And the more often you have to stop and check rules, and I'm not sure. Let me think. The less confident you are, the more it's going to impact the flow of your game. Now, let me put this caveat in there. Every person, every dungeon master is going to have a rough time when they start, because a lot of what we're talking about, the only thing that's going to fix that is repetition. Running 50, 60, 80, 100 combat encounters before it's in your brain and it's verbatim. Repetition. So you need to go in this relaxed and understand that you're going to make mistakes. Veteran dungeon masters that do this for a living make mistakes regularly. Don't hold yourself to an impossible standard of expecting to have everything down day one. No. Know where to look. Okay, and that's what the first few episodes were about, is what does it look like and where do I look for it? So once you're confident and comfortable with that, then in my opinion, you're ready to go. And literally ready to go into adventure mode. Well, almost. So, let's call this session -1. What is an adventure? What am I about to get into? If you're using the basic set, the Lost Mines of Phandalin, Dragons of Ice, Spire Peak, which are pretty good start points. I prefer Phandalin, honestly. Different philosophies, whatever. It doesn't matter. Both adventures are, honestly, you could combine the two and have an 8-level campaign out of it if you wanted to. We'll talk about that in world building stuff. But and I apologize. It's really easy when you're talking about dungeon mastering concepts to float between a bunch of things. Uh, Campaign planning versus adventure planning, world building versus campaign planning. So a lot of this stuff is interchangeable, but I do want to try to break each of them into components and kind of focus on them. That way, when you hear the terms and you yourself start experiencing this thing, you'll understand a little bit more what I'm talking about. That a lot of one thing, creating an adventure is its own thing, for example, which is what we're going to talk about here in a second. But creating an adventure directly is impacted by your campaign. Your campaign is impacted by the setting, the world that you're using. Each of these is their own thing, but each of these will have a direct effect on each other. So let's take it. We'll go from small to big. We're going to start with an adventure, then we'll go to a campaign, then we'll look at world building. Not all in the same episode. We could run 50 hours on world building and not agree on it, but still be valid in our points. So, creating an adventure. I'm a new DM. I want to go. I'm ready to go. I'm going to get into this stuff. I want to run an adventure. What's an adventure? I think it's where I put some monsters in a map and have my party fight them. Basically, yeah. But in modern 5th edition expectations, there should be a lot more story to it. There should be a why. Now, here's the first caveat. When you're creating an adventure, I'm going to call this session -1. You're getting ready to bring your people over, sit down at the table, start talking about D&D. You're about to go live on your chat and have your session 0. But you as a dungeon master need to have done this, what we're talking about today, prior to that. What are you going to run? Hey guys, welcome to the campaign. We're going to play X, Y, or Z during this adventure, whether it's a one-shot or whether it's a long-term campaign. Even if you're not telling them what you're playing, hey, welcome to the campaign. Hopefully everyone's ready. Make sure, let's talk about our characters, and then we go from there, hypothetically. You need to know what you're going to run. You need to have some preparation work done. We talked about that when we were going over the mock combat encounters, that there's a few things that you always have to have on hand, whether you're using digital tools for it or if you're using an index card or building a spreadsheet. It doesn't matter. Your method's going to fit your play style, your scenario. But you always need to be aware of your monster armor class, no matter your format. You always need to be aware of hit points. You always need to be aware of their attack modifiers, their movements, their saves, their resistances, etc., etc. So, you don't necessarily want to be flipping back and forth through your monster manual every fight. You want to jot those down somewhere if you're pen and paper. If you're digital, spend the time building the encounter in D&D Beyond or Roll20 or whatever you're using. Just make sure you have it on hand. That's preparations you want to do before your adventure starts. But this is a step before that. What am I using that monster for? Why is that monster there? What is my adventure? That's, man, I guess the best term to use is holistic. That's a concept type of a thing, but there are some definitive things. First thing you're deciding before you go any farther is this a one shot or is this a campaign? Now, again, like I said, you don't have to commit to either, but you need to have that in your mind as a DM when you're getting ready to set stuff up, when you're creating your adventure. Am I just doing one? We're just going to play this, try this out, and have fun, because that's going to influence how you create your adventure versus this is the first of a dozen. That's a question for you to decide on your own. Maybe a dozen or maybe 100. It doesn't matter. But creating your first adventure, using your first adventure even, you need to be aware of, I just want a one-shot. I'm learning how to DM. I don't want to commit to a campaign. I just want to run a single short adventure. So that's going to change your prep versus a long-term campaign. But the idea of an adventure is a shared story. An adventure's, you get to express yourself. And let me go ahead and flip over to, so you're not just, obviously, if you're listening, this will be 99% audio. So you don't have to worry about trying to check your screen out. It'll make a pretty good podcast. If you're wanting to watch, apologies, this is going to be a little bit text heavy. So here goes. But we are going to go ahead and flip over to the Dungeon Master's Guide according to D&D Beyond. Let me scroll in a little bit on it so we can get a slightly better view. I'm using this from the simple fact that, again, whether you're using D&D Beyond, Roll20, Fantasy Grounds, you got it on your shelf behind you. You should have access to the DM's guide when you're when you're ready to really get into dungeon mastering. So I want to use a basic source of information that we can all readily access and refer to, and give you mechanical, mechanical, what am I thinking? Tips and tools, opinions, things like that as we're going along. So there we go. So yeah, I'm just gonna, for the most part, we're gonna skim through the book and talk about what's real here. Because again, after my video is over, you can rewatch it, but you'll always have the book if you have the book. So being able to refer to the book and talk about what it means will mean every bit as much as just repeated podcasts. It talks about building an adventure is a reward for being a dungeon master. That's kind of the key. We want to create stuff. We want to build stuff. We want to present stuff for our players to play with. The adventures and our campaigns and our worlds are expressions to do that. That's what the players are connecting to the game in, is our adventure. Fundamentally, they're stories, beginnings, middles, and ends. They can be as big or as small as you want. They can be small. They can grow really big. They can be big and they can fracture into 2 or 3 other bigger things. They can be small and stay small and local and have a lot of fun with that. It's the story that you want to tell. First and foremost, you're not obligated to rewrite Song of Fire and Ice. Don't put yourself up on the pedestal of saying, I'm going to write an adventure to rival that of Lord of the Rings. Not right out the gate, y'all. But that's at the same time the idea. We'll just say the trip from, oh shit, more toys, yay. Sorry. I'm going to use Fellowship of the Rings. Most people have seen that. If you're a D&D person, you're probably a fan of it. The section where Frodo and Sam book ass, and they get caught up, and Aragorn almost takes the ring, and they say run, and that whole combat sequence, starting from that point, ending to where Frodo and Sam are on the other side of the river. That's an adventure. That's one part of the big story. So that's what we're going to start looking at. Not every adventure is going to be the same. As a matter of fact, adventure should vary through the course of a campaign to make sure that we're hitting all the high points appealing to our players. Now, before we go too far into this, I do want to flip over to this. You should have an idea of what your players are interested in. You don't want to invest, and I use broad terminology when I say this, but you'll hear me say the term drama kid. That's me being an old guy referring to the theater kids, disparaging. It's not meant to be disparaging, it's just an extreme. The extreme of that is murder hobo. Neither person inherently bad. That's just an extreme version of both player. The drama kid doesn't ever care if they kill a monster. They want to engage in the role play and inhabit their character and engage in dialogue with every bartender and go into the library and go through the lore and finally describe in detail what they're wanting to do. And as no different than as a dungeon master, I'm describing a scene with descriptive box text. The drama kid is describing their actions in the same way. Not good, not bad. That's an extreme variety. Your murder hobo. Your murder hobo gives zero boo-hoos about a story. Do we get to roll dice tonight? How much do I kill? How much do I loot? Can I sell it? Can I get another upgrade because I want to go kill more stuff? We call them murder hobos because they exist for one thing. Kill everything in a region and move on. They never form a base. They never form a plot. They're hobos. They're wandering murderers. Okay? That's the other extreme of the same paradigm. So when you're sitting down to play with your group, when you're planning your adventure for your group, are they murder hobos? Are they drama kids? Lord willing, all of them fall in the middle. So that's session 0 stuff, making sure that you adapt the adventure to well, that's the perfect time to talk about right now as well. Making sure that you're planning your adventure to appeal to everybody. Now, you're not always going to have 4 players in unison liking the same 4, 5, 6, however many your players are. It's a very rare thing that every one of them feels the same way about the game as the other. They all prefer combat over anything else. I don't ever care if we have a line of dialogue. I want some cool fights, and all 5 people want to do that. And if you have that, then, you certainly don't want to put them in the assassin's knot trying to find out a whodunit on the Lindor Isle. You maybe want to go drop them in Dungeon of the Mad Mage for their entire campaign. Understanding your players is the key to making sure that you're spending your preparation time on the best adventure for you and your group. Okay, kind of talked about that way back in episode 1. If you're building a story that only you care about and your players aren't engaged in, the players aren't going to have fun. You're not going to have fun. You're not going to be frustrated. Remember, it's a collaborative type of a thing going on. As you gain in skill and as you gain in familiarity with your group, you can force things certain directions. But early on, you need to plan for overall flexibility of the group, and also give yourself room to go left and right rather than, no, we have to go here because my story demands it. That's a world building type of a thing. Day 1, you're hopefully not planning that far out. You're planning 2 or 3 steps ahead of yourself. If they get this done, maybe we can go here, and if they can do that, they can go here or here, and in case they go there, I'm going to put something there. You're like, what is he talking about? Well, let me just do a hypothetical here, okay? Hypothetically, you're starting your first campaign out. You're going to start pretty simple. Each of them was from a different city along the high road going from El Turul to Waterdeep. They all have different backgrounds. They've joined the caravan within a few days of each other as guards or travelers. We'll say guards. That way they get into a fight right off the bat, okay? And, various skills. This is a paid way to get from point A to point B. They may not know each other, whatever. So that's the premise for our mini adventure that we're just going to talk from inception of the idea through execution, as it were. The immediate goal for the adventure is for the caravan to go to Waterdeep. The big bad there, in my mind, hasn't been established for the party yet. They're small, low level. All they can worry about is what's in front of them. They don't have the resources to go left or right. So that's all I have to plan for right now is this caravan. I want the caravan to, and pro tip, if you end up running Tyranny of Dragons, rewind to this because this will cover about 15% of the gameplay for the Horde of the Dragon Queen campaign. Anyway, sorry. So, but it's a good generic start. It puts everyone on a neutral footing. No one's starting in their hometown. Everyone's moving along as strangers coming together. So you'll have the very simple attack at some point. Now, this is where logic dictates, okay? If this is a caravan of 8 wagons and there's your 4-player guards and each wagon's got 2 people on it, you're up to 16, 20 to 21 friendly NPCs, right? That's too many for level 1. You don't want to take care of all of that. You don't want to have to manage 25 bad guys so your party actually has a chance to fight. As epic as it sounds, and it does sound really cool, the caravan's been running along the dusty trail. Last night was a little bit scary as a small pack of wolves came in trying to get to one of the horses, but you were just simply moving out there. You're able to yell and shout, and this is me talking to the party, by the way. And the wolves were dispatched into the forest with no swords drawn and no blood spilled. Next day, your party wakes up and you form up, and each of you separates out onto the wagon, keeping your eyes on the field, and you notice a lone figure on the ridge of the hill off to the right. The hill to the right of you is a small pasture, about 150 feet up the hill. At the crest of the ridge, there's a small tree line. Lots of thick grass in between there. It's been a dry, dusty, hadn't rained in a while. The dust of the wagons has kicked up quite a cloud, and you're looking out there, and you can tell they're looking at you. Suddenly, you hear him pull a horn out and blow a horn, and 20 riders emerge from the tree line. At least 20, maybe 24 horsemen bearing down on you very quickly, galloping down. You can hear feel the ground starting to shape and see the dust kicking up and the mud clots flying off of the hoofs of the horses as these bandits shout and begin bearing down on you. Roll for initiative. That sounds fun, okay? Your party plus this caravan is about to try to fight 20 bandits off. You don't want to manage that day 1, okay? So in this situation, you've already got a plan. Okay, if this is my scenario, we'll have 1 wagon break a wheel, and your party stays back with that wagon, then that wagon comes under attack by 4 or 5 brigands instead. exact same scenario without having to manage all of the big stuff. So you know, my hope in that quick brief description is for you to understand that the cinematic can sometimes make the application very, very untenable. To attack a caravan of a five wagon caravan, there's going to be at least 15 or 20 bandits. So you don't want to do that. So that's part of planning. That's the holistic, strategic, logical aspect of it. And when you can nail those details, your party will immediately get sucked into it. They'll understand. It'll make sense to them logically, so they don't have to process it. So they can connect on a character level that much quicker. Okay, but I digress. Let me flip back over to the book here. Creating an adventure involves blending scenes of exploration, social interaction, and combat into a unified whole that meets the needs of your player and campaign. So this is reiterating, it's not about your story as much as it is about the shared experience. If your players don't fit into your story, you don't have a story. If your story doesn't fit your players, you don't have a story. Or you don't have players, vice versa, however you want to look at it, So understanding the basics of storytelling. And if you're new to this, if you've never done any creative writing or anything like that, that's okay. This is honestly the 5th edition DM's Guide. This section here does a really good job of putting the basics on paper in easy to read and digestible form. The Dungeon Master's Guide is not necessary, but it is very, very, very useful for a new DM. You can go basic rules and shoot off the hip and have fun and be creative, and that's still D&D, and your friends and you are going to have a great time. But adding the DM's Guide to it can bring a lot more information and a lot more accessible guidance and resources to help you as you grow. Eventually, you'll throw it away. I don't want to say throw it away. Eventually, you won't ever really need to use the DM's Guide. You'll have it all in pretty hand, and you use it as an occasional reference. But it's pretty good to have early on. So we've talked about creating the adventure, the basic elements of good story, the elements of a great adventure. Now these, where it says great adventure, I want you to understand this also applies to campaign. So we're going by the book here because this information we'll all have. A credible threat. The adventurers need a threat worthy of the hero's attention. First and foremost, a credible threat is what it is. I'm going to add this to it. Your party does not need to be aware of the credible threat at the beginning of a campaign. In a short adventure, your party needs to be aware of the credible threat so they can take care of it in that 3 or 4 hour time period. That's the caveat there. That's my opinion on that. Yes, that is an absolute must for the BBEG, the big bad end guy or girl, as they say. Who are they? What are they? And BBEG is a scalable term to your adventure. A BBEG in a one shot could be an ogre chieftain. A BBG in a campaign can be Igwilv or Vecna. So that's your credible threat. And again, like I said, I want to emphasize that based on what you're planning, the party doesn't even necessarily have to be aware of it. You have to be aware of it because that's what you're planning around as a dungeon master. Familiar tropes with clever twists. You've heard me say that before, and I'm going to say that again. Using the mundane, using pop culture, using tropes is perfectly fine. It doesn't feel original to start in the bar. It doesn't feel original to go to the caravan. But you've saved so much more setup time that your players are in the moment. So when you make that twist, they're in tune on it. They can easily visualize what it's like to be in the tavern. I know it's a running joke, but how you present the next step with a clever twist is what is going to make it pop. Okay, there's very few campaigns that the players won't end up in a bar at some point. That's a trope because it is what it is. Why is it that way? This is me cutting out of character a little bit. As a history guy, this is what to help you make sense of it. Keep in mind this way that we're still based. This game is based on medieval times. Early 11th century, 800 AD to 1200 AD, roughly. No cell phones, no mail service, no communication other than word of mouth and the occasional handbill. So the most we have the term pub, public house, tavern, roadhouse, inn, whatever you want to use. That's why they're so prevalent in every single community, and that's why they're okay to use. But because short of electronic communication that doesn't exist in the D&D world, there's no other way for people to share information. You're not going home and reading a book in most cases. Most of the society isn't educated, doesn't have a reading level. There's no TV to watch unless you're in a big city. There's no gladiatorial games. You do your day's work. You head to the tavern. You have a beer. You chat with your neighbors. You go home and you go to bed when it gets dark. So that's it's perfectly fine because that's a historical basis for that trope to exist. So keep those kind of things in mind. Move forward in confidence that that's what you're supposed to be doing. And if your players ever go, "This is dumb. Why is there a bar in every town?" Stop and give them a history lesson. and they're going to instantly shift because that's going to help them feel more in the moment. It's not a derogatory thing. We're be able to parallel something that we're using in D&D with actual history. Our players can make that connection, and they're able to embrace the game and embrace the moment a little bit more. Okay, focus on the clear and present. An adventure is about the here and now. A little bit of history might be needed, and the adventurers might discover lore as they're going along, but the history of the world should be evident in the world building, but that's it, okay? And that's a double-edged sword on that, 100%. Your adventure starting now, moving forward. The past is the past, and while it would make for some good story, if your entire adventure is dependent on the past, you're trying to tell a story. You're not trying to play a story. Hopefully that makes sense to you. You can use clues from the past context to the past to make your characters feel like they're researching and using clues and fulfilling prophecies and all that. That's part of it. But it should the adventure or campaign should never be dependent on you telling them what happened 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, or even 5 years ago. That should not be the dominant part of your adventure. That's background information. Let your players roll their history checks and their arcana checks so you can build the world and weave the tapestry. But an adventure should never be dependent on them having a history lesson. Okay? It should be about right now in this moment and moving forward. That's going to apply to your players as well. A lot of people will come to your tables eventually and potentially with big old gigantic, backstories. And you will find your feeling on that how you feel. Personally, I go by 3 rules. Because I believe on the clear and present and future, past is past, because I feel the same way about it. The past might have built up to where we're at, but where we're at is completely separate. A player's backstory should never be the guiding point for a campaign. Your player's backstory should never be the focus of a campaign moving forward, because basically then it's the XYZ show co-starring the rest of your players, and it by default turns them into spectators. So keep an eye on using a player's story as the campaign, at least early in your career. You're playing with 3 to 5 other people at the table. They have to be as important as every person is important. So if you're trying to manage 5 different backstories that become 5 different distinct plot lines, you can kind of see where I'm going with this, because even if you can resolve them well, you're never going to make any progress on your story. The most creative, one of the best writers in the world is going to be hard-pressed to take 5 distinct, in a perfect world, this happened in my past, and this is going to happen in my future, and I'm the child of this prophecy, and having all of those. And obviously, if you're a creative person, you can think about it, but I'm telling you, when the details come up, it's so difficult to try to do. Same thing for the players as you. The history is the history. Their backstory is their backstory, led them to this point, but what's next, okay? Heroes who matter. This is the idea that... I need to zoom in just a little bit, I'm sorry. This is the idea that your players' actions actually matter. Player agency, player accountability, player freedom, affecting the world. They're not there to tell your story. They're not there to experience your story by rolling the dice when you tell them. Their actions need to have impact on the world. So you need a plan for multiple avenues of approach based on player agency. Early on, It's okay to be linear. It's okay to be railroady. Your players at level 1, your characters that are level 1, they're fighting for survival. They're trying to get the next paycheck. They're trying to get the next level. So you can be very heavy-handed in saying, you guys need to go 16 miles to the east, hang a left on the dirt road. There'll be a ruined tower up there that recently some skeletons got loose in, or a necromancer from across town was doing experiments, left his dirty work. Can you go finish it? That is a perfect one-shot mission. Okay, sure. You have 20, 30 minutes to bullshit with each other, 20 minutes to get there. Maybe you fight a bear along the way just to let them roll some dice. You get to the tower, kill the skeletons. End of session. End of story. Okay? Early on, your players could say, no, we don't want to do that. And are you going to say, too bad, that's what you're doing? Now, this is completely out of character and holistically speaking. Yes, you can say that. Hey, guys, this is my first session. This is kind of what I had planned, so let's go ahead and do this so we can get some practice in. Feel okay doing that early on. If your group of players, if they're a solid group of players, they're going to be like, yeah, cool, no worries. So absolutely 1,000,000,000% early on, first couple sessions, be as heavy-handed as you need to manage what's prepared. You're learning how to play D&D right now. You're not trying to tell, the Game of Thrones story on your first time out. You're not trying to build out freaking the Chronicles of Narnia on the word go. You shouldn't be anyway, because you'll be drowning yourself. Whatever you have prepared in your first couple sessions, feel free to just go out of character and say, guys, hey, that sounds fun, and I'll keep that in mind for next time. But for right now, can we just do this? This is what I have prepared, and get on with it. Because remember, we're playing a game. Roll all the way back to the beginning of that. We're playing a game. If we didn't bring the right map to play this game tonight, we're not able to play, or we're going to improvise. So in this situation, you're prepared for this. Your players will go along with it. For your first few sessions, you have that privilege, I guess you could say. You have that obligation to focus on the mechanics and actual gameplay, less on the world building and the agency. So Heroes Who Matter is a big deal, okay? But day one, no, it's not. We're here to learn D&D. Your first time out is to make sure everyone learns something and has fun. As you get comfortable with the rules, as everything starts going, and the one time you say, cross the bridge, hang a right at the fork in the road, follow the creek a little bit down. When you get to the dead forest, go left and climb up to the ridge of the mountains and battle the ogre and his pet bear for me. And your players get to the road and they go, you know what? What happens if we keep going down the road? And when you're ready to say, I don't know, find out, that's when you open up the world. You're under no obligation to do that until you're ready for that as a dungeon master. Your players say, early on, well, man, what happens if we kept going? I'm not really prepared for that right this time. We're still practicing, we're still learning. Let's just go kill the ogre. Okay, fine, no big deal. Blah, 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 have fun and go. Okay, that's repetition. You're not going to get the chances to get the reps in of administering combat, administering the turn orders and practicing actions and reaction casting and all that, if you keep diverting and have to go suddenly come up with a brand new encounter because you let them go left instead of right. Okay, so that's part of the adventure prep day one stuff. Keep your preparation focused, okay, and understand in the first few sessions your players are just going to have to deal with that. But eventually, when you get a little bit more in-depth into the game and you get more confidence in running it, your hero's actions should matter. They should have the freedom to approach things from a different angle. They should have the freedom to say no to a job if they want, and for you to be able to have to go, okay, well, what do you want to do now, and handle it, okay? Something for all player types. As the book outlined, and we talked about that right off, the murder hobo versus the drama kid. Need to make sure that there's moments within your adventures that adhere to everyone. You need to make sure that people are feeling heroic in however they want to feel heroic. If all your bard wanted to do was play cards, flirt with waitresses, and play some music and get some coins, and they're along for the ride when it comes time to fight, invest in that tavern scene for a few extra minutes. Make sure that you're giving something for all your player types, whether it's the puzzle solver, the killer, the intrigue lover, the mountain explorer, the negotiator. Find out your player type and make sure that you're giving them something to enjoy. And it's impossible to make every session hit every key for everybody. It's okay. But don't neglect someone over 2 or 3 sessions. Make sure they have a moment. It's not impossible to give every player type a moment. So focus on doing that. That leads back to what we talked about early on, knowing your players. You've invested in each other as people. You know what each other's interested in. You know who has fun with what. So that should make this part of it a little bit easier, okay? Surprises. Look for opportunities to surprise and delight your players. That's part of the adventure building. This is mid-level, second step DMing, okay? Be okay with going with the tropes. Be okay with going with the basic as you're learning. The skeletons in the ruined tower, the hobgoblin and goblin warband pillaging the countryside, the ogre and the bear up on the mountain, the blighted forest and the blight, the poisoned forest and the blight monsters running around, the owlbear, rampaging through the barnyard, the six wolves that jump on people at the fishing hole. Basic simple stuff is all you need to worry about at level 1, day 1, starting to DM. You don't have to worry about surprises early on, but you do need to make sure that you're planning on that. And I'm going to go on this trip a little bit here and say surprises also includes adjusting stat blocks, hit points, resistances, and armor classes for your meta players. Meta players being those individuals that can memorize an entire stat block and go, why is that thing still alive? What do you mean? It's only got 12 hit points according to the monster manual. Well, number 1, 12 is the average genius, so it could have as high as 24. Number 2, now everything on the table just doubled because you're metagaming. Surprise them that way. I'm kidding, but not really. But yeah, change up your typical encounters. Maybe not every creature that they're running into is evil. Whether it's a combat encounter that turns into a surprise dialogue because this particular owlbear can speak, or it's a surprise encounter because it's the other way. The nice lady that is living alone in the woods and for whatever reason brought you in for dinner turns into a freaking werewolf and starts lunching on you. Surprise is something that you can do and have a lot of fun with. Useful maps, something else that you need prepared. This is one that goes both ways. When you're new to D&D, take what's in front of you. Take Lost Mines of Fanling gives you a bunch of great easy maps. Don't be afraid of drawing your own maps if you want to. Keep them in scope. I'll do some demos on maps as we go down the line. Honestly, I would recommend that you catch my Twitch streams every Wednesday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central. I just map. I build maps. Building maps, outdoor maps, underwater map. Every week I do a different kind of map, and we talk about planning an encounter for those maps. But maps are part and parcel, whether you're playing pen and paper with miniatures on the table, whether you're playing VTT with fog of war effects and tokens, or whether you're playing theater of mind and jotting down on a piece of graph paper just so you can visualize it. Maps are a huge part of it because you're looking at something as a dungeon master as you read this description off to the room. You need to make so the maps are a useful thing that's going to sit on its own. Okay. These are the basics of a great adventure. Published adventures. This is just a brief thing. Are available for purchase if you have neither the time nor inclination to write an adventure of your own, or if you want to change the pace. First and foremost, you're still going to do some writing. You're still going to do a lot of adjusting. This goes on and tells you can make adjustments to a published adventure. I'm here to tell you, you will make adjustments to a published adventure. You can replace the villains, and that's a can. And obviously, a published adventure can't account for every action the characters might take. So they allow you to focus your grim preparation on highlight plot developments than in your campaign, the adventure. That's their polite way of saying, this is the structure of the story. We can't plan for everything your party's going to do, so you're going to have to do that. But it's okay. That's the whole idea of a published adventure. It's a framework. Very, very, very few published adventures you can start from beginning to end without ever having to do any extra work. I mean, it's a fact of life. Some are worse than others. Some are way worse than others. Some are better than others. But make no mistake, 100%, I want to emphasize, a published adventure is a guideline, it's a structure, it's a good tool, but it is no means a completed work that you can run as written without some preparation. Furthermore, a published adventure is going to require you to read the entire adventure so you can understand the structure before you start playing. Making a homemade adventure, you've got it in your mind and you can build outward as you go. So there's pluses and minuses on both, okay? But beginning, middle, and end, that's what you need, just like a story. The hook to get them interested in, and beginning, middle, and end applies to both short adventure and campaign. We need a short adventure. The beginning needs to take as little time as possible. You guys remember seeing each other briefly as you got onto the large sailing vessel leaving the port of Rotterdam. No one saw the storm coming. Thankfully, only part of the crew was tossed overboard during that, and two of the snails was snapped. But what no one even saw coming after that was the large kraken that came up and crushed the ship into little bits in the nighttime sky. You waken and you look at each other as the four of you are all that remains of that boat's crew floating through the ocean on this chunk of debris. Your makeshift raft is large enough for the four of you. Thankfully, whatever you had on your bodies at the time of the impact is what you're carrying, but everything else has been lost to the depth of the sea. That's a hard start beginning for a short adventure. We don't have time for any plot. In 2.5 minutes, I got us started. There's your beginning. What's the middle? Well, we need to find our way to to shore somewhere. Blah blah blah. Some survival rolls, some perception checks. Okay, the sun's over there. Let's go that way. Okay, I remember that Rotterdam was to the east. We were making our way south to the port of never summer. Okay, for example, whatever. And so let's make our way there. So the middle now, our hardy crew sees a large boat floating, slightly listing off into the distance. A strange mist roils across the ocean, seemingly out of nowhere. They feel the temperature of the air getting colder and clammier as their makeshift raft bobs along the waves. The tendrils of mist and the tendrils of fog teasing at the raft as they get closer to this strange boat. The boat looks like it's spent hundreds of years underwater, covered in barnacles and coral and weeds and grass, but yet has no visible damage other than its strange list. We're now at the middle, okay? They got to know each other. They've been floating. Maybe they had to poke a couple sharks with the I still got my weapon, a shark attack, poke, yay, middle. Now they're at the highlight. They've come to this ghost ship in the middle. Obviously, I haven't said it's a ghost ship, but at this point, if you've been listening to me, you're like, oh shit, that's a ghost ship. Yeah, my players should be saying that as well. The description I gave them, it's obvious. I didn't have to tell them that. They're supposing that, and the scene is set for the middle, okay? Exploring this ship, fighting the ghost of whoever, whatever, breaking it free from the living seaweed that's bound it into place, gets us to the ending. They're able to free this ship in a climatic battle with all of the forces of evil, right the sail and continue their journey south and gain great rewards and fame for the return of a long-lost sailing vessel and the end of a curse. There's your end, your climax, end of done. So what I was kind of jokingly describing there is absolutely a one-shot adventure. It's also the makings for a huge, gigantic campaign. Beginning, middle, end. You'll find that if you can get to those structures when you're thinking of game ideas in your game, always think that. How am I going to begin this? Where's the meat of it? And how can I wrap this up? You never want to try to build an adventure idea if you can't have an end, okay? This is something from experience. I've got a lot of perpetual campaigns because I did a piss poor job of planning the ending, and I'm kind of moving the goalpost as we go because everyone's still having a lot of fun. And that's something you'll get to do. You'll learn how to do that with practice, but for right now. Beginning, middle, and end. How's the adventure start? How do we get it in? What's going on in the meat of the adventure, and how do we resolve it, okay? All adventures have to have those. All campaigns have to have those. And so obviously if you're running 25 adventures part of your big campaign, each of the endings needs to be able to lead to the beginning of the next. So that's where your complex story building is going to come into. So we're going to roll down here adventure types. Now, real quick, I'm going to zoom out just a second back on this. This is strictly a tool for home brewers. From the adventure type section all the way down, it's a useful section if you're a home brewer and you kind of get stuck, or if you're wanting to start building but you're not sure where to go. The DM's guide is useful in the sense, or if you need to fill in some gaps in your pre-written adventure. You know, you've bought Out of the Abyss, and you realize that while it's a really cool module, about 40% of the actual travel time is either hand-waved or stuff that you're going to have to come up with. Dang, what do I come up with? Okay, so first and foremost, it's these things here, the tables. Man, I mean, unless you're building a completely, absolutely random dungeon, which you can do, and this is kind of speaking to the more senior dungeon masters that might be on this feed. If you want to have a challenge, roll you off of these tables, get your goals off of here, and then write a story about that. You know, that can help. Just a practice session. You know, world building, campaign building. A lot of it's gonna. You don't be afraid of practicing. Don't be afraid of seeing where this idea starts, where it can go, what's the conclusive end, where can it branch off, where can I lose track of it, where has it gone entirely off the rails and I want to throw it away. You know. But the goals of a specific dungeon, a location-based adventure, is going to be a dungeon, a wilderness, or other roadside, city, urban, something like that. So this is just coming up with a goal for your adventure that day. Destroy a magical thread inside of a dungeon. Find an NPC who disappeared in the area. Discover why a villain is interested in this dungeon. Or maybe they're out in the woods, or they're out in the desert, or they're out in the plateaus and mountains. Wilderness is not always just woods. This is a nice table. Again, same thing. It's a D20 roll. Hunt a specific monster. Arrive at a destination without being seen by the villain's forces. Escape the reign of a tyrant. Protect the wilderness site from attackers, etc., etc., etc. Other goals: retrieve an object for a caravan, attack a caravan instead, defend a location from attackers, attack a fortified location, escape from jail or break a prisoner out, so on and so forth, rescue a creature. Okay. Quick random tables, they can help you, even just looking at them might give you some ideas. So it's a useful template to have if you're wanting to have fun, or if you're absolutely desperate, or if you just need to have, I need an adventure tomorrow. Oh shit, my DM's sick. I've been talking about wanting to DM. Everyone's going to let me do a one-shot tomorrow. I better come up with something. That's where these tables can help you out, you know. You have access to the DM's guide. You have access to a lot of resources that can help you build a freaking adventure from inception all the way down to the dungeon, you know, with die rolls. Yes, there's a random dungeon die rolling generator in here as well. It's kind of fun. So the dungeon goals, wilderness goals, same thing. We kind of talked about that. Important NPCs. You're shooting off the hip. You're just trying to figure out who the bad guy is. So you can just, same kind of thing. You can roll. A beast or monstrosity with no particular agenda. He's just out there eating shit. Aberration bent on corruption or domination. Fiend bent on corruption or domination. Dragon bent on domination and plunder. Undead with any agenda. Blah, 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 blah. So it gives you a variance. That's up to you if you want to use this kind of a table. Typically, it's easier to come up with your own antagonist based on the setting rather than it is to try to make sure that the antagonist that it gives you matches the thing that you rolled a little bit ago on. Okay. Likewise, this is just adding NPCs to your short adventure. If you want an ally, if you want someone to go along with them, or if you need someone to provide information to them, the hook type of a person. Go talk to the local ruler. Now, you're still gonna have to do the work you don't want to use this midstream, okay? Because then you got to come up with the name and all that. This is guidance for you in your preparation. Location details, kind of the same thing. This entire section is just a section of tables to help give you ideas, guidance, or even solutions as you're building your adventures. No villain, many villains, framing your events. Maybe you're wanting something to happen at a specific time, and so on and so forth. Now, I'm going to step back a second. Like I said, I wanted to be thorough and go through the creating adventure section as part of the DM's guide, because it is a common source of information. This is where I'm going to step away a little bit from the tables and inform you. That information is not for you as a day one dungeon master. Okay, that information can make things bigger than they need to be, make things more complicating than they need to be. When you've had a round or two of very short, very simple adventures, you're comfortable with handling the rules. You know how to look up spells. You've ran 3 or 4 combats. Your people are having fun. You're getting into being able to roleplay and offer up dialogue. You know the difference between difficulty checks and all that. That's when you can start, in my opinion, really getting into creating adventures, creating encounters, and creating campaigns. Don't worry about the creation stuff until you're confident with the rules. You don't want to be managing both at the same time. So be okay with it. So let's take a step back further and say, okay, Mr. DMGeezerjim, I've got the basic rules you've been telling me this whole time. That's all I need to play, right? And nothing has changed in that statement. Absolutely. So the stuff I've been looking at the DM's guide, you may not be able to see that. Okay, you won't because you don't have the book. There's still the main information, and it's given in the DM section of the basic rules. Let's go ahead and scroll up there real quick just so I can be thorough. You know, like I said, this is an information thing. My opinion stuff goes a little bit more onto my my Twitch channel. Sources, view all sources. Give me just basic rules, man. Damn. Okay. Let me pop back over to that screen. Basic rules. The Dungeon Master's Tools, Part 4, Chapter 12. It gives you monster statistics, building combat encounters, running the games. That's all you need to know. It's going to tell you a lot of the same thing with nowhere near the amount of depth of information or tables. So everything you need to be a DM is sitting in here, Part 4, Dungeon Master's Tools. It's going to talk about building combat encounters, getting a little bit more into using CR rating. I left this off purposely because I think this is broken. This is one of the main failures in D&D is the combat. Well, okay, let me just get out the way. Combat encounter, easy, medium, hard, and deadly. That's the idea. Could be lethal for one or more characters. Requires good tactics, grit thinking, and the party risks defeat. Deadly does not mean that your party's guaranteed death. Any party can get lucky, okay? Character level is going to decide your encounter difficulty. XP threshold is your total amount of XP. When you look over here at a monster stat block, let me just get, I know this is the wrong, we'll go right here, okay. See where it says CR 14 XP 50? That means a medium encounter for one first level character will be that guy. So a level 1 character can handle a 1/4 CR as a medium encounter. Usually has 1 or 2 scary moments, but the character should emerge victorious with no casualties. Medium is still win, okay? All medium means is we're going to use a resource or two. So get that in your, kind of understand that as far as encounter building. We're going to go into a lot of depth on that before too long. I just wanted to show you a section to ignore. I'm kidding. So that's really it that you need for running the game. Talks about, how to manipulate objects, armor class for attacking, statistics. This is all stuff that, comes with time. Don't want to worry about it. The main thing that I wanted to, I apologize, I'm drifting here. Focusing on your adventure prep, understanding what an adventure is, understanding what you need to prepare before you sit down and say, hey guys, I'm DM Bob and this is what I'm going to run. Are we ready to do it? You need to understand all of what an adventure is before you get to that point. You need to understand and plan for yourself in regards to, DM's workshop is kind of a fun thing for optional stuff. We'll look at that in more advanced kind of thing. Where do we go? Elements for create adventure. Yay. Okay. So, day 1 DMs. Keep it short. Keep it simple. Minimize NPCs to 2 or 3. The barman, the guard captain, a couple people to talk with, maybe a merchant, or if they're going out to a farm, Farmer Chuck's wife, Linda, and their kid, Opie, that went running off in the woods, and you guys got to go rescue him because he ain't come home, and it's near dinner time. Small, simple. You don't even have to really map out your farm unless your characters go nuts and kill everyone on the farm. So we'll use Opie, the rescue of Opie, for our quick example for day one adventure designing. 4 NPC names, jot them down, give them the commoner stat block. Find Opie. Opie went running in the woods. A lot of times he goes up into the north. There's a big old busted up tree that's halfway over a ledge that he likes to play around on. But, you know, other than that, he's usually pretty good about coming home, so we're afraid something happened. We're going to go check this. We're going to go check up there. You guys check that. It's easy to find. We're going to check some of the other spots he might have gone. So mom and dad go looking in one way. The party goes looking in another direction. So this is our hook. This is our beginning. You could have had dialogue at the tavern before that. Oh, somebody help me. Opie's missing. Oh, damn, says, you know, Barley Man, the bartender, and looks at the, hey, y'all trying, you guys are new around here. Why don't you help out the locals? Okay, sure. And they're off. So you could start at either point. You could start in your tavern, or you could start at the farm for a one-shot, for a quick adventure. You, as the DM, are responsible for setting up everything up to that point verbally for your party. You know, however you guys got here, blah, blah, blah. You know, traveling dusty roads, you decided to stop here for a beer. Or you know, you guys were new in town. You got in a bar fight the night before last. You got brought up before the judge. The mayor. Oh, what's this? Oh, cool. The sorry about that, guys. You know, the magistrate of the town orders community service, and luckily for you, there's an opportunity to serve. Your start point's up to you. All it's got to do is put your character at the start moment of getting to the farm to go rescue Opie. So that's 20, 30 minutes of gameplay. You know, ideally, with your party chatting with each other, with you presenting the situation, you know, and informing, you setting the stage. So we've got our first 20, 30 minutes of our first session covered, okay? You need to decide now, prior to this, you've decided in your brain, this is a level 1 group. I don't want to beat them up too bad. Opie was going and getting some honey, and you know, or you know, was playing around, and he saw a honey hive, a beehive, and he was going to rip it down, take it home, and a couple bear were on him. So Opie went up a tree. The bear got him centered on the tree, but the party's got to find that place. So you'll have him do a nature check or survival check 1 or 2 times, making their way through the woods to Opie's tree to make sure they remember their tray there. You want to describe the woods, you know, give them a little bit of fun, maybe give them a scare as they see a shadowy creature in the bushes, you know, 30 feet off, you know, kind of moving alongside him. The moment they go to attack that, oh, I'm going to get that thing, the creature runs off into the brush. You know, use those little storytelling moments to eat up a little bit more time, make your players feel like they have a choice. You know, they have the choice of this stalking shadow to go attack it. There's no fight there. That's just a moment. But, you know, okay, ooh, shit, that was close when we chased it off. We scared it off. Yay. So that's probably covered another 20 or 30 minutes of your session here, okay? Maybe a little bit more, depending on how much more you want to put into the woods. You could have a small encounter with a couple, those shadows, rather than the characters, you know, jumping at them and running away. They run towards the characters. So 2 wolves come busting out of the brush and attack the party. You know, wolves don't have to fight to the death, so you can control that one. They'll hit once or twice, and if they, you know, and then run off. So you've inflicted a little bit of wounds. Maybe the party got the kills, maybe they didn't. It didn't matter. If you add the wolves in there, that's going to add about another 30 minutes to your first session. So you're now sitting in about 20 minutes, 30 minutes to set the stage, to get the party to the farm. 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes going through the woods, getting into their skill checks. If they had a combat there, promise you, if this is your first fight ever, that could take 30 minutes to an hour to handle. Or it could go really quick if your characters get lucky and roll high. It could be over in the first round. But keep that in mind, you know. So from there, they get to the old tree where Opie's supposed to be. They see no sign of him. They see maybe a walking stick or something left there. You be creative there. Leave him a clue or something to where, yep, and sure enough, this kid was here, but I wonder where he went now. So then you will move your party from there into another skill test. You're rolling some skills. You're doing this and that. You're taking them from that point back into nature checks, survival checks, describing the forest as they follow the trail. And they'll hear some disturbances, and they hear someone, a small voice saying, "Oh, help, help, help." And the party will encounter 2 large bears surrounding a tree with Opie up there holding a thing of honey. And that's your second encounter. Your party fights off the bears. If your party's not murder hobos, you can have the bears scared off after a little bit of damage. If you don't care about killing the bears, your party can kill the bears, help Opie down, take them home. Oh, thank you so much. Stay for dinner. Here's a bottle of my best whiskey. Here's 25 gold. That's all we can afford. And that's the end of your session. Okay. Took me 10 minutes to invent that, describe it, and get it through to you. Your first adventures can genuinely be that simple because, again, your adventure folk. Ooh, that looks cool. Your focus initially is learning and practicing the rules. Don't get distracted by trying to tell an epic tale as your first adventure or your fifth adventure. Your first few sessions as a dungeon master, when push comes to shove and you're on the table, it's all about practicing and getting comfortable with the flow of the game and the rules. Don't get crazy with your plots right off the bat. Okay, those will come naturally as you absorb content. You can get your content absorption and your creativity will improve and express itself as your confidence in the rules grows. That's a good way to put it. Yeah, it's a great way to put it. So, getting right here at the hour mark. That's good. Okay, so yeah, we kind of talked through the whole idea of what is an adventure, what do they need to include, a couple different examples of them. Again, the key to this is always in your relationship and your rapport with your players. Understanding what they enjoy, understanding what they're looking forward to and exciting for will hopefully guide your preparation and make it a little easier to set up an adventure. Your adventure prep should be limited to the session in front of you for the first few times that you DM, okay? Which will lead us into our session -1 stuff, but that's okay. When you are a brand new DM, push campaigns out of your mind. You're playing one-shots until you're comfortable with the rules. You're playing one-shots until you're confident that, when you know, oh, shit, that's it. Let me go look here real quick. You're not like panicking and freezing. You're never going to memorize everything, but you need to be confident in what you know, and you need to be able to access what you need relatively quickly from there. That's the baseline for knowing the rules for a DM. Memorizing, like we talked about in episode 3 and 4, memorizing the turn order and all of that kind of stuff, being confident and looking everything else up. Once you've practiced that through 3 or 4 short adventures, then you get into campaign building. And that's what we're going to talk about in our next session. So, or my next episode, I guess. So, yeah. I apologize, this one kind of went back and forth a little bit as some of these higher level concepts are wont to do. But again, if I emphasize nothing more to the brand new Dungeon Master, think small, think manageable. Your first few sessions are about getting control of the rules, getting confidence in the process, the turn order, getting comfortable with action versus bonus action versus reaction versus held action, making sure you know all of that kind of stuff, and getting a few rounds of it. Don't let the desire for this big grand adventure cause you the difficulty of being uncomfortable with the rules. Keep the adventures simple, keep them small for your first few times. Think tutorial levels in a video game. Okay, eventually you don't play the tutorials anymore. You see the controls, you're ready to go. You'll get there soon, and your new campaign will be like, hit the ground running day 1. Holy crap, Demogorgon just cracked out of the sewers of the yawning portal and went tearing north, and the giant walking statues went following after him. You'll be able to do that when you get more confident in the game. I don't want to dissuade you from thinking at that level, but don't give yourself that pressure day 1, man. Make sure that your first session, second session, fourth session, sixth session even are small, single episode, one-shot, episodic, start, middle, end, quick beginning, fun middle, satisfying resolution, rinse, repeat. Don't even need to be connected. You can even, when you're doing that, you can give yourself your option is, hey guys, go ahead and make 4th level characters so we can try out some of these higher level mechanics now that we're feeling better about this stuff. And then from there, you're ready to go. Once you're confident, once your player's confident and comfortable, then you get into your campaign building. Okay? So, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and close it out right at an hour. A little bit above that, but I apologize. Thank you if you've enjoyed this series. I'd love for you to leave me some comments. Let me know if you're enjoying it. Let me know your thoughts on it. It's going to be a lengthy series because there's a lot that goes into DMing. You don't have to watch the whole series and know all of it, but I'm trying to offer up information on each section should you be interested in it. But if you do find this stuff informative, make sure to like, subscribe, share, do all that kind of stuff. You know, share a link with your DM or another DM that might be someone that might be interested in doing it. You want to help us out, I've got links over to my Patreon on my bio stuff here on the screen. I'm talking live 5 days a week on Twitch, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Standard. You can find the link on the YouTube channel as well. I'd love for you guys to join me over there if you want to, you know, straight up Q&A. Hey, I watched your video at XYZ, da-da-da-da. Yeah, that'd be the perfect place to catch me. But you know what? Whether you've been here for, 10 minutes, whether you've been here for the full hour, I appreciate your time. I hope you found this informative. I know it's thick. It's okay. And a lot of what I do is repetition, because of a lot of what we need to do as Dungeon Masters is repetition. Whether we're repeating the encounters or repeatedly reading the rules, it's reinforcement through repetition. So you're going to find that in the series a lot as well. So apologies in advance. But you guys be safe. Thank you. And until next episode, we'll catch you soon.